I'm going to let people file in. All right, we'll let people get into the broadcast. Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Sasha Connor. I'm here with Denise Dalicandro, and we'll get started in a minute. I'm calling in from the suburbs of Philly. I love seeing some people in the space chat right now telling us where they're from. I see we have somebody in HR at GitLab in Dallas, which is great. Feel free to pop in the chat where you're calling in from.
Nice. Wow. Georgia, Maryland, Minnesota, all kinds of good spots.
Great.
Love it.
Brooklyn, New Jersey.
I'm in Ohio. I don't see any Buckeyes quite yet, but maybe.
Well, I think we have a good group to get started. I know more people will filter in as we go. And so, as I said before, I'm Sasha Connor. I'm the founder of Virtual Work Insider. So it's a consultancy that provides personalized team and one-on-one training for virtual leadership skills. So if you're working in distributed teams across different offices or working fully remotely, I come in and help train you on the virtual leadership skills needed to succeed. So we have a couple of housekeeping topics before we get into it with Denise. The first is welcome to Remo. This is probably the first time you've been in this software platform. And it's actually a platform that was designed to be a virtual office, which is a very cool thing if you haven't heard of virtual office software before. But we're using it today for our event and also for some virtual networking that we'll get to after we talk to Denise. And I'll give you some directions on how to use that at the end of our Q&A session. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes talking to Denise. I have some pre-written questions that we're going to go through, but there's also a Q&A box in the upper right of your screen. So feel free to enter your own questions in there. You can enter them anonymously if you'd like. You'll also have the ability to upvote on those questions as well. One other thing to share with you is that I'm going to try to share my screen here. It'll be a little fancy. You can see my screen here. There is a one-pager that Denise pulled together for us. And you can download that at my website, so virtualworkinsider.com/anxiety. And you can download this one-pager as a tip sheet that you can take away with you after the session. Turn that off. And like I said, we're going to open it up to 20 or so minutes of virtual networking. We'll explain that toward the end. So let's introduce you to Denise. So Denise Dalicandro has 15 years of experience in the consumer packaged goods industry with various roles in sales, category management, consumer, brand, and shopper insights. And she's currently a global insights manager for the Clorox Company. So Clorox is headquartered in Oakland, California. And Denise has been working remotely from her home in Ohio for more than 4 years. So I actually worked at the Clorox Company too. I worked there 14 years. And I know that we have many people calling in from Clorox today to listen to Denise's story. And in 8 years that I worked there, I worked fully remotely as well. So I've gotten to know Denise over the past several years, and she has such a great personal story to share with you all about her struggles with anxiety and how remote work has been such a game changer for her. And one last thing, this is our legal caveat, which is we are not doctors, we are not mental health professionals. This is meant to be, Denise sharing her really personal experience and giving you to her tips that she's learned over the years. So this conversation is not meant to replace any reaching out to a mental health professional if that's what you need. But we hope that Denise's story will resonate with you. So, welcome, Denise. So could you just share a bit about yourself and kind of why you're here today to set the stage for the event?
Yeah, so I'm here today because a few months ago, Sasha and I were talking, like she's leading this amazing virtual leadership webinar with our company. And I wanted her to know just how much she's made such a big difference in my life. So for me, there were two like key pivotal moments in my life that like changed my health forever. And that was one, when I finally realized that I had social anxiety disorder. And then two, when I actually got to start working remote so I can finally start to feel better versus an office environment. So Sasha actually pioneered the way for all of us at Clorox, me personally, to be able to work remotely, because for how many years you worked remote?
8 years.
8 years. So 8 years, she's been like the leader, the pioneer for Clorox, like persistent and just pushing this forward to the point of that it opened up the opportunity for everyone else because she was so good at it. So she was such a high performer as a remote employee that it definitely opened that up for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. So
Thanks,
I share that.
I was not expecting that. Thank you so much for the compliment.
Well, honestly, like it just changed my life so much. So I wanted her to know, because this is terrifying, but I'm here because like if I can share this story and I can do what Sasha did for me to someone else, and if what I'm saying and sharing changes someone else's life for them, then it's 100% worth it, as scary as it may be. So throwing it all out there, being vulnerable and just diving in. So there's certainly a stigma related to mental health. Which is unfortunate, but it prevents people from being willing to speak up and share out. So there's a lot of fear about it, of just the perception of what people will think of you. And for me, like I've worked with Clorox for 13 years, and I just started sharing this story about the anxiety, social anxiety, within the last couple of years, with people that I trust, because it's just the stigma related to it. You don't want people to perceive like that's going to affect your ability to perform or work. So, and the reaction of everyone is always just like disbelief and surprise and like, what? Like, but you're so great. You're passionate. You can present in front of customers. You're friendly and all this. And I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with like, that's my personality and that's my job and I'm good at it and I love it. But it has nothing to do with like what's going on inside and how I feel. So like, the best way to describe it is just like this ongoing feel of like jolt of electricity running through your body, where your mind and your heart is racing and it's hard to catch your breath. And there's excessive worry and fear that just is absolutely unnecessary, but it's just there. So for me, it's just the ongoing battle every day of managing that. And I figured out how to do it. And I feel like I'm operating at a very high performing way of like managing it, because like I said, I've discovered that I had this for the last like 6 years. So now I'm figuring out like how to actually manage it. But for me, that game changer was actually getting to work remote, which we'll obviously dive so much more into, but that was a game changer for me. So social anxiety disorders, it affects a lot of people. It's the number one mental health issue. For me personally, it's that feeling I just described. And then there's the additional social anxiety of being around people and engaging with people every day, just like the self-consciousness that comes with it, the excessive worry of like just simple things that you take for granted, like eating in front of someone. Believe it or not, like lunches are really hard for me, like eating in front of someone. There's just this self-consciousness that they're staring at you, judging you and all that. Writing in front of people, like the little things that I just avoid because it just causes extra anxiety. I wish that wasn't the case, but I know it's all in my head, but it's there. So it's just managing through all that. So I'm here in the hopes of helping other people and spreading the word of how remote work can truly change your health for the better. So that's why I'm here today. And a quick bio about me: born and raised in Ohio, working remotely out of Cincinnati here locally. My husband and Matt and Pumbaa. I've asked them to leave because sometimes they like to make an appearance. So just for the sake of everyone else, like as adorable as my pug is, I love him, but he doesn't need to make an appearance today. So they've left the building. But so my family here, I have family in Ohio. We all live within 3 hours of each other, which is amazing because I'm all about family, fun, and feeling good. So spend a lot of time with my family. I'm very blessed that we're all so close together. And for me, managing anxiety, a lot of it is finding those outlets. So when you're stressed, anxiety, like work can be intense, like what can I do outside of work to make me feel better? So I fuel those feel good things. Like for me, it's a creativity outlet of music, art, dance. I started making homemade candles, like anything I can do that's going to be therapeutic and healthy for me to feel good outside of work. So I try to channel that outside of work, which helps to like offset the stress and anxiety, or at least manage it. And I'm all about spreading positivity and good vibes. So I'm very active and an advocate for women in the workplace and part of Network of Executive Women. And I volunteer with young women in high school and college, and all about championing character, compassion, and courage, and uplifting others. So outside of work, I'm very much about just moving women forward in the CPG industry. I've had like such a good experience in CPG and I love it that I want to like open this up to other young women when it's the time to influence their choices as young ladies. And me personally with social anxiety, it stretches me. Like I found the thing that I'm passionate about that I can dive into, and it stretches me personally and professionally, but I'm so passionate about it. So I'm out of my comfort zone, but it's so rewarding that I found the thing that works for me, that helps me grow. So that's kind of that's my story, and that's why I'm here.
Well, I want to commend you for coming forward and sharing your story, because as you said, the past couple of years, you felt comfortable enough to even talk up to some trusted people about the anxiety you were feeling. And this is a really public forum now, right? So like this again is like stretching you, taking you out of your comfort zone to be able to share the story more broadly. And also it sounds like, you're finding coping mechanisms as well to help you to not just within your work, but then externally. So finding these other ways to connect with people in your community that still is stretching you out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So I know you worked in a physical office with people for years before going remote. So what was it like working in a physical office with anxiety? And maybe you can talk a little bit about, I know there's been this huge trend for the open floor plan. I know even at Clorox, each floor is kind of developing into that more recently. So how did that affect you and your anxiety?
Honestly, the idea of an open floor plan is like my nightmare. Like that sounds awful to me. And after like working with remote environment and just being able to thrive and feel so much healthier and better, me personally it's all about the relaxed state of mind and body and being calm and in my comfort zone. And that idea of the open office is scary just because like there's the self-consciousness of people just always looking at you, judging you, or just being there. Like that's just always going to be there. Where remote, like I can at least start from a calm state. Like I don't have all that going on in the background. So like I'm starting from a good place. So in the office, when I was in the office, it was a very different experience because I was never comfortable. They used to nickname me the mouse because I would just like scurry out of the office and like go get my coffee and then scurry back in. I would decline lunch meetings. I had no desire to engage, which made me an amazing employee because I was super productive, all about the work, like all in, head down, all the good stuff. At the same time, like obviously it hurts your relationships, which was sort of a bummer because I'm surrounded by these amazing people at work. Like my best friends, some of my closest friends are my coworkers, and I just respect the heck out of them. And it was challenging for me to like every day to be like, yes, let's go to lunch or let's do coffee and all this. So I would just avoid those situations, which put a strain in relationships, which was super disappointing because nothing but love for all the people I work with. It just, me personally, I just didn't want to feel bad anymore. And like, I'm okay with like diving into work, working through lunch, like eating in my office, not coming out. So there's definitely the extra anxiety of like the face-to-face, the social engagements, the meeting after meeting, and like meetings face-to-face are a lot more stressful than meetings virtual face-to-face. So like there's that extra anxiety of like being in the office always on and feeling like you're always watched. That added that extra stress. And even just the commuting adds the extra stress, So working from home, game changer, because now I'm in this super comfortable environment. I'm able to manage my anxiety through healthier habits. So when you have anxiety, it's very mental. You can, of course, like I'm on meds. That was a game changer for me, but it's not for everyone and everyone's different. What works for you? So being in the office, in my home, the comfort zone, it's like I really am starting from this relaxed state of mind. So I'm starting more relaxed. I'm comfortable. I'm able to thrive because I can do healthier habits like the breathing exercises to manage the anxiety. I can go for a walk with my dog throughout the day to take those breaks. And I shared with Sasha, like for me, the biggest blessing was like even being able to get a dog, because when I worked from the office, I was like, I didn't want to put him through that, not being here with someone to take care of him. So working from home, it was like, I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. Like I can get a dog, and they do release stress and anxiety. So I sleep with him at night. And the biggest thing with a lot of anxiety is that you just can't sleep and your mind doesn't shut down at night. But when I've got Pumbaa next to me, like he calms me, and there's this anxiety relief that I get from him that I would have had if I wasn't working from home. So like there's so many blessings just being here that makes me a better employee. It makes me healthier. Honestly, like I just feel like a human being again, and I can function again. And it's like I'm all in. Like I was all in before, but like now I just feel like a human being again, and there's less of like the internal stuff to have to manage.
Yeah, and I would imagine that engagement level with your company for allowing you that flexibility, and like you said, like giving you your life back, makes that engagement level even go up higher than how high it was before.
Yeah, I've been very lucky that Clorox is wonderful. I mean, they absolutely understand work-life balance, and especially in Global Insights, like it's just I guess more progressive with working from home. So I've had wonderful managers, a few that maybe even listening now, that have just allowed me to work from home. But I've been with Clorox for 13 years. So I've also proven myself. I've proven that I'm a hard worker. I deliver, high performer. Like I'm absolutely going to thrive working from home just because of what I deliver. But then on top of that, with having the anxiety, like I thrive even more from home. So it's been nothing but positive working from home and remotely. So for me, I've been very blessed to have managers that have been understanding and been nothing but supportive.
And speaking of the manager, so how did you approach the subject of working remotely with your manager? Because there might be people listening right now who are feeling the same kind of anxiety that you are, and it's adding to their anxiety because they don't know how to approach their manager.
Yeah, I think for me, I got lucky because we were actually considering moving for Matt's job, where we were going to move to Columbus. So I was going to have to work remote and not here in Cincinnati. So it just worked out that within that year transition, I started working remote. And because I started working remote, I was like, oh my gosh, like I just love it so much and I feel better. I feel like I'm thriving. Like it was such a good experience that after the fact, I was like, I don't know if I could ever go back to the office. So again, Global Insights is more progressive, where they're just like willing to accept the idea. A lot of people are remote because you work in the field. So a lot of us are remote anyway, but they just allowed me to just dive into it. If that was not the case though, I would say like as a manager, the best thing you could do is probably just like having that, or with your manager or as a manager, is having that open dialogue of like, how do you feel? Work-life balance, like, are you healthy? Do you feel healthy? What could be better? And if they are suffering from any sort of mental health or anxiety disorders, then clearly being in an office can contribute to that. And especially if it's like the open floor format and those kind of things. So I would certainly just think of that and just make sure that that's top of mind, that could make work that much more challenging for a lot of people if they're suffering from it. So I got lucky. My manager, my function, they're all in, but if not, then like just be open to the idea of it, because for me, it's allowed me to thrive. And if I'm going to be a better employee working from home, then why wouldn't you want that for everyone else?
I was at a conference recently, a diversity inclusion conference, and I heard a lot about this kind of anxiety piece of things talked about as kind of a silent disability, where it's something that it's not obvious to managers. And so I think what you're bringing up is for managers to kind of be aware and maybe ask some questions and kind of know the whole person that you're managing, and be especially cognizant of it if there is a change happening within the office structure, like going to these open floor plans. I talked to a lot of people who are leading these disability ERGs at the conference, and they mentioned that as a big trigger point and as a big concern, because it's something that hadn't been vocalized before. So I think you're bringing up all really good points here.
Absolutely.
The question popped up, how can a manager business tell if someone has anxiety and that needs to be addressed? Is it easy for someone to share that?
It's definitely not easy to share. So like, again, it goes back to the stigma around it. It's like, so for me, the only reason I started talking about it more recently is because, like, Sasha, I wanted to share my story with you because, like, you literally changed. It was a game changer for me. So I was like, I have to tell her. I just have to tell her. And then I had other health issues where I ended up telling my managers, but I just trusted them so much that I trusted them with that information because they knew I was a proven performer. I think there's just the fear, like you're already excessive worry, fear, like that's always there anyway. So adding on the extra fear of that your manager or anyone I work with right now listening in would have a perception that it in any way, shape, or form impacts my performance, which is not true. So that is absolutely why people don't speak up. Like they don't believe it. They fear that it impacts your performance. And that's absolutely not true. It's like, again, it's all internal and you figure out how to cope and manage. So as a manager, it's like, I think just start out by having the dialogue and asking them, but you can probably see the signs. Like if they're reaching out to you and asking for a little bit of like, reinforcement of like, how was that meeting? How did this go? Like for me, the best thing my manager ever did was being candid with me right after a meeting, because the excessive worry, you would just like obsess, like, I think that went well. Did it go well? Like, what is their perception? How did it go? And it's like, boom, my manager would be like, okay, here's what went well. Here's what could have been better. And I'm like, perfect. I don't have to worry about it for the next 24 hours. Like, I know exactly what happened here. But if they're reaching out to you and kind of like, you can tell they're kind of like seeking that feedback, that could be a sign. And if they really do disengage with social engagements, like for me, it was all about like, I just would not engage with social, like lunches, decline that stuff, a little bit more reserved. They probably to you just feel like, hey, they're introverted, they're shy, they're reserved, they're quiet. So like the personality test, like if that could be one indicator, like, okay, is there more to that? Is there something else going on there that it's like, yes, you are introverted and that's already a barrier, a huge barrier, but like, is there something more to it? So I think the signs are certainly how they behave in the office and around other people, and then just kind of like what they're looking for you, from you.
You mentioned earlier that the meetings, when you were in the building together, you know, the meetings can invoke anxiety. And then now working remotely, Clorox is a huge meeting culture, right? So you're on virtual meetings constantly. So do you have any examples of how, or tips on how to best show up if you're having anxiety in these virtual meetings?
And honestly, Sasha, like all of your tips for how to lead in virtual meetings, like virtual leadership, how to show up, actually 100% resonates with me as anxiety too, because the best thing you can do is like, number one, chime in early. Like those icebreakers, chiming in early, like you're literally like engaging yourself right away. So it's like breaking down the fear. So a lot of anxiety, it's like you have to train your brain. It's a lot of self-talk and training yourself, like getting out of your own head. Like these thoughts aren't real. So like, and the more you do those things, the less scary it becomes. So the more I engage, like speak up early, speak up often. So like the more I would talk, the more I would chime in, the less scary it would get. So you just really have to like force yourself to do that, and then your body no longer fears it. So that certainly helps. So chime in early, chime in often. And I like to keep myself off of mute because unless there's background noise, obviously that's disruptive, but it's just one more barrier to be able to chime in naturally. So it's all about feeling that like that comfort, natural engagement where I'm off mute. I'm like, I'm engaging when it's the right time. You always say like you like to laugh in when they laugh, and I'm like 100%. Like that makes you feel so much better too.
Right. So Denise was talking about is we did a virtual leadership training on just leading successful and effective virtual meetings, and one of the tenets there is starting with an icebreaker, and it does many things. It makes sure that everybody can see and hear each other in a virtual environment. But what Denise is also saying is that it allows people who are even introverted or all the way to feeling anxiety, gives them the opportunity to speak up early so that it makes it easier to speak up later. So this is a tip that can work for any virtual meeting, but it sounds like it's especially useful to those with anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say that's the other thing that's true of either virtual or in the office is just when you have anxiety, like the excessive worry can also come from just like the unknown of like what's going to happen, the fear of this or that. So just like you were saying, operating from fear is not a good feeling. And so like for me, it's all about preparing and prep and being in control. So when I'm preparing for the virtual meeting, it's like, do I know what we're talking about, the topic? I'm prepared. I anticipate all the questions. I have the answers ready to go. Same if I'm in front of a customer or any sort of meeting. It's just prepare, practice, and feel comfortable. And that helps to give you the confidence to be able to speak up and chime in.
So we just talked about virtual meetings, but also another thing that happens is, a core tenet of mine when working in virtual teams is that you need to get together in person, and you need to have a cadence of having in-person meetings or in-person offsites. And so how do you deal with managing anxiety when you know you have a physical office visit in front of you?
Mm-hmm. That is like the extra, like bring out everything of like super prepared, organized. Like I print my calendar. I know where I need to be when. I'm in control of my schedule and who I'm meeting with when. And every meeting I'm going to show up prepared, practice, whatever I have to do, like anything to minimize the anxiety related to those specific meetings. So there's that. So like being in control is certainly going to help to reduce anxiety. And then above that, it's really, it's like when you go into the office, everyone wants to talk and engage and like they haven't seen you. So it's like, it's intense because it's like everyone's all in and you're like kind of surrounded. So I think it's starting small, like baby steps. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start out with some coffee meetings. I've got some meetings after that. So like kind of ease into it and then maybe work your way up to like that lunch meeting or the happy hour and all that stuff. So just kind of like easing your way into engaging with people versus diving right in. And I think it's true of anyone. It's like when you do go into the office, like everyone wants to see you. They want to have every possible meeting they can to make the most of your FaceTime. However, that's not always productive because it's not a typical work week. And it truly is like adding extra pressure and anxiety that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So for me, it's all about personalizing me time, scheduling the me time, like whether you have to like physically schedule the me time or just maybe declining some of the happy hours and stuff. Like I just need to like get a little bit of me time, a little bit of re-energize and avoid, it's just too much. So cramming too much in can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I experienced that firsthand too, working remotely for so many years and having such a large team where, you come out and you want to see everybody. You want to see everybody who works on your team, all your senior leaders and all of that. But as an introvert, also needing time to recharge. And so sometimes I would extend my trip so that I knew I had some breaks that I could still do all the work and have the social stuff, but there would be a little bit of a breather, even if that meant me staying an extra day away from my family, which is always a trade-off. But how do you manage your health in the situation, but give everybody else what they need and what you need? It's a hard thing to balance. Yep, so I know we have some questions on the right-hand side now that are getting a little bit broader around remote work. I think you talked a little bit about some of the tactics that you use to be productive and manage your anxiety from working at home. Are there any other productivity tips that you've experienced in your years of working from home that you could share?
I mean, if you talk to anyone that works from home, I think majority of them will tell you that they're actually more productive at home because you don't have all those interruptions. There's like the water cooler talk, the social gatherings, the pop in, the pop out. Like, yes, there's IMs, but you're still working. I'm in front of my computer. Like I'm literally in front of my computer all day long. And like I take a break to go for a walk for health reasons or may not like for lunch and stuff, but you're just in front of the computer all day long. And like a lot of people say it is hard to shut down and like between personal and work and all that. And, that's true too. But honestly, I think if you talk to anyone, like you're just more productive working from home because you don't have all those interruptions or distractions. So as far as tips, I think the environment itself actually makes it more of a productive environment.
And we have another question too around, does Clorox allow anyone to work from home or only certain positions and roles? At a previous company, one of our leaders was against remote because if we do it for one, we have to do it for all. And I don't know, when you asked to go remote, whether you had a similar conversation with your manager around, is this precedent setting? How does this work? What was your experience with the policy at Clorox?
Yeah, I mean, you have so many good examples of like the rationale for why working from home is just really good for some people. I think it just varies on the person too. Like for me, I thrive working from home. I'm a better employee working from home, but does that mean everyone will? Maybe not. So I think it really is a judgment call, less about like the functions and all that, but just a judgment call of like, if it's better for that person, then maybe it's the right thing to do. But Clorox, like they were very open to listening to that or having me work remote because I've been with Clorox for a long time. I'm a proven high performer employee. So like lower risk to allowing me to work from home. And then, of course, there can always be a trial window. So maybe it's just like a temporary thing where you test it out or you do both. Like there's people with Clorox that will be remote part-time, they'll be in the office part-time, and they do both. So I think there's just like the flexibility of what's right for the person, what's right for the role, and figure it out. So I think it's all new too. Like you pioneered this for Clorox, like it's all new, and it's just like everyone has a different opinion. Some people are all in and supportive, and others think that it's definitely a barrier. So it's just being able to prove that that's not a barrier, I think, is the number one step for anyone working remote. So if you can nail it and just knock it out of the park year one and get them to say yes and prove that it works, then that's a good first step. So I don't think it's isolated to any function. It's just person to person may have a different point of view.
Yeah, right now, from my experience there, it's been on a case-by-case basis, based on the manager, based on the leader in the function. I would say that the vast majority of the company is office-based. I think some of the work that we did within the ERG, the virtual workforce ERG orbit, we had some data that maybe it's like 7 to 15% of the company is fully remote. So it's still a very small minority. But what, we did a lot of discussion around, it's a virtual company because we're working across multiple office sites. And then we have a minority of fully remote workers sprinkled in there as well. So we're going to answer one more question, and then I am going to give instructions for how to do the virtual networking, because then Denise and I will be able to pop in to smaller groups and actually answer questions or chat further. So the question around, how did you know or realize that you had social anxiety disorder? So that you mentioned earlier that it's something maybe 6 years ago that you finally recognized that, and that was really important turning point for you.
So as a kid, like I've always known, like I get anxious in certain situations, and you just always think, they're shy, reserved, introverted. So I think those are like the signs early on in life. And then as a kid, it's like there's the fear of maybe like reading in front of a crowd, or like just how you behave in the classroom, of like this extra fear or worry around like, oh my gosh, I have to like present or read this out loud and everyone's going to be judging me. So like those are like the early on signs. And then it wasn't till like it started to get worse throughout my life. And it wasn't till probably like my career with Clorox that I started like, all right, I feel like I can function better if I can just figure out what's going on inside here. So literally like the feeling of electricity, that fight or fight feeling that people get when like you're scared or you're about to present, and the extra anxiety from work, like that's always there. So that's a good indication, like something's clearly off. The excessive worry, the fear of eating in front of other people, of writing in front of other people, avoidance of social engagements, and just feeling more comfortable being alone. Like clearly for me, those were my signs, but I think everyone's different. That's for social anxiety. For general anxiety, it's just that, the racing heartbeat, the racing mind, you can't sleep at night. Like if you're having problems shutting down your brain and just functioning and being, like that's clearly a sign. So again, I think everyone's different, and what works for everyone is going to be different. But if you look up any, signs of social anxiety or general anxiety or any sort of mental health, like if you're feeling any of those symptoms, clearly that's something you may want to talk to your doctor about. That's how it started for me. I was like, I finally got to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I was like, I just want to be able to function and feel good again. So I went to my doctor, was like, here's, I think what the triggers are, but it's resulting in like no sleep and the inability to like function fully throughout the day. And then it was like, okay, so let's start with the things that you can do, which is eat healthier, be healthier, breathing exercises, meditating, like all self-talk, talk therapy, all the things that you can do outside of meds that help. And then for me, meds worked, but they won't work. You know, maybe it's not what everyone wants to do or their go-to solution. But for me, the combination of all that has worked for me.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I just put the link again to the tip sheet that Denise put together where you can download that. It's in the space chat on the right if you'd like to download that. And then I am going to attempt to share my screen again, which is another great function of Remo here. And I'm putting up the contact information for Denise and myself. So Denise has offered, if anybody had additional questions that they'd like to ask on a one-on-one basis, that you can contact her through this email address or through LinkedIn. And my information is there at the bottom as well. So I'll give you a second to download that or write that down if you'd like. And then we're about to get into some virtual networking. And so I understand that there could be some irony here because networking actually can bring on anxiety. I know myself as an introvert going into conferences, I sometimes get really concerned about this. But I wanted to introduce you to being able to do this in a virtual environment because I think it actually is less intimidating. For example, you know, when you're at a conference and you're trying to physically network, you have to walk up to a group of people who are talking and you don't know if you're interrupting. And in this case, it's going to be a little bit more of an equal playing field because everybody, after I hit a button, everybody's going to go back into these virtual rooms where there's going to be 1 to 2 other people or 3 other people there, where the expectation is that you're breaking in and you're chatting and saying hello. So what I wanted to show you really fast is if you're going to hang around to just try out this virtual networking, you will get back to the screen, which looks like these different breakout rooms. You'll be placed in a room, but what you have to remember to do is turn your audio and your video back on. So that's in the lower right hand of your screen. You'll see that web camera button and the microphone button. So you have to turn those back on, and you'll just have a little video screen open where you'll see the other people who are in your room. And so I've done this through Remo before. It's been great. I've met people who I've stayed in contact with after the fact. So if you hit it off with somebody, exchange your information with them because you never know when you might want to chat again. And I know there's a bunch of people who are on the call today who lead employee resource groups. And I've heard that one of the struggles is how do you get employee resource group members to be able to interact over distance because you have different chapters and different offices. And so again, try out this platform and see if it's something that you could actually leverage within your own employee resource group. So I'm going to press a button in a second and everybody's going to go back to the rooms. Feel free to leave now if you'd like. We'll be sending out the video recap after the fact, in case you wanted to share that with other people who couldn't make it today. And I will leave the networking open until about 20 after 1 East Coast time in the case that you guys want to stay over and keep chatting with each other. And you can move from room to room. So if you're in one room for 5 or 6 minutes, then you can double click into another room and meet a whole nother group of people. Well, thank you for joining us today, Denise. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being so brave to do it. And I will see you all in the networking group.
Thank you, Sasha. Thanks for highlighting this, to me, very important topic. So I appreciate it. Glad to be here. Thank you. Bye.